Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the 2018 Nazi zombie-themed film Overlord. Before we get to it, I wanted to encourage you to comment on this video to enter the giveaway. It's pretty easy and super fun. Last week I paired Hellfest with The Funhouse, two similarly themed movies. Hopefully after watching both videos, you got the ways in which they were similar. This week you can enter by commenting on the video what you think Friday's movie will be in relationship to Overlord. You can win some money by thinking in terms of Nazi zombies, as though you would otherwise think in any other terms. I see you. Let's get to it. We open on a tense scene inside the fuselage of a World War II transport plane approaching the European front. The USA is engaged in a direct attack on Germany, and this is the first phase. We get to know some of the characters as they banter and demonstrate how nervous or ready they are for what's to come. When the sergeant enters to pep them up, we find that their particular mission is to take out a radio jamming tower placed atop a church. This information is relayed by way of the Sarge's best impression of Dave Chappelle in Whiteface.
That support will not make it through Jerry's defenses if we do not get that tower down by 0600.
They awake at nightfall to the sounds of heavy anti-aircraft fire and 20 assholes slamming shut in unison. They begin to panic, but the jump lights bring them back to focus as they realize they're all going to make it off the plane one way or another. We follow our main character, Boyce, through the chaos and into the water below. He manages to cut himself free and takes a quiet moment of reflection. But just a moment. In the confusion on the ground, they attempt to regroup. Boyce borrows some equipment and then watches helplessly as the Sarge gets executed. Ford prevents him from a similar fate and helps him refocus his attention on the mission at hand. They find some friends along the way, lose a friend, sneak around a little, find a pile of wet and soggy remains of indeterminate origin in the woods, and then run across a nocturnal woodland pedestrian. They have to grab her and discover she only speaks French. Oh man, they were going to Germany. They must be way off course. Boyce does his best to calm her.
Stephanie.
And it works! Yeah, sort of. They have her lead the way back to her village, which is luckily the same village they were looking for. The team goes off to scout ahead and make sure it's safe. When she is seen and whistled upon, she initiates an unexpected trust exercise with Boyce, the worst kind, and then goes to confront the Germans, who release her after a quick search. Boyce meets back up with the gang and, now realizing they all have a shared interest in despising Germans, they proceed in more familiar and friendly terms. After settling in, Ford sends Tibbet and Chase to the rendezvous point to connect up with any other survivors. Boyce heads downstairs and receives some medical aid from Chloe, who confides that her aunt has been to the radio tower church and hasn't been the same since her return. After a sufficient amount of character development, the Germans arrive and do that creepy German thing they do. When things escalate quickly, Boyce finds himself unable to stay still. With the situation now ratcheted up, they find themselves needing to enact their mission quickly. Boyce is sent to bring back Tibbet and Chase. However, when he is confronted by an apparently racist dog, a shepherd of some sort, he runs and jumps blindly into a truck of dead bodies. This brings him right back to the German encampment. When the truck stops and the soldiers begin to unload it, Boyce finishes unloading in his pants and then slithers off. On his way, he takes advantage of the old building's numerous nooks and crannies and finds the interior radio room for future reference. He ends up in a cool project room to be envied by any Nazi scientist, full of tubes and fluids and sacks and fluid sacks, as well as the miracle of birth. He finds Jacob, one of his comrades, and pulls out his stomach tube before stealing away into the sewers and disappearing into the night. Back at the cottage, the group is interrupted by Boyce's return, upon which he begins babbling incoherently about reanimation and unspeakable horrors, but also has some valuable intel. Thirsty for more knowledge, Ford begins an interrogation of Waffner, but the info is not promising.
You got at least 40 men inside the wall.
With little time left, they finalize their plan. Chase is sent to get the German officer, who he finds unresponsive. Psych! He's taken down, but not before squeezing off a few rounds into Chase's chest. Desperate times compel Boyce to take action, and he gives the Nazi science juice a try. It seems to have some effect.
I feel really good.
Although this positive phase is short-lived. And Chase is able to stand up against all but the most violent of rifle butts to the face. In the confusion, Waffner sneaks out and grabs Paul on his way. A firefight ensues, but he makes it out of there, although not before taking a brutal face shot. They then argue about the next steps of the mission, but ultimately agree to go the suicide mission route, blowing the radio tower from inside whilst saving Paul and destroying the lab. At the lab, we find that Waffner deals with his condition by turning himself into a pincushion, while outside our protagonists get their parts and split up. Chloe lures the sentry to a secluded location, and they send him back to base with explosives. Afterward, Jacob and Tibbet stay behind to draw as much attention as possible while the others go inside. Chloe splits off to find her brother while Boyce and Ford head to the radio room. They concurrently take care of business, with Ford setting charges in the tower room as Boyce heads down to set some in the lab. He leads Chloe to Paul and then sends them off. but they run into some trouble on the way. Chloe triple taps the monster, but with only momentary results. She finishes the job with a flamethrower. Ford finishes setting up his charges, but is confronted by Uberwaffner, who destroys the detonator. He pulls Ford to the lab and then hangs him up by his ribcage. He monologues long enough to get shot up a bit, which only makes him angry. While distracted, Ford pulls a Jason Voorhees to free himself. Seeing the end is near, he pre-juices himself. This leads to a protracted battle between Ford and Waffner that ends with Boyce blasting him out of the picture. Ford then locks himself in the sinking ship and commands Boyce to set the secondary detonator in the radio room. He lights off his C4 like an M80 right as the other zombie soldiers finally come join the party, but nobody gets to make a wish. Boyce makes it out just in time and joins up with his team and the villagers as they emerge to radio reports of the Allied victory. Boyce then debriefs and gets his new assignment, keeping the secret of the lab to himself, and they all have a moment of respite before taking their next mission and continuing to do whatever's necessary to finish the job. And that was Overlord in a nutshell. A pretty well crafted and slick genre film worth your attention. And if you aren't subscribed, I'd love for you to be a part of the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.